France sought to create colonies for a complex mix of economic, political, and ideological reasons. Economically, colonies provided access to raw materials, new markets for French goods, and opportunities for investment. Politically, colonizing helped restore French prestige and power on the world stage, particularly after military defeats. Ideologically, France believed in a civilizing mission to bring its culture and values to other parts of the world. Welcome to the first episode, The Ambitions of France to Colonize the World. How they started colonization. The second episode will be early life and society in France, and the third and final will be how they controlled the colonial countries. As well, the fur trade. Indigenous peoples were eager to trade animal furs for French goods. France invested time and money into exploration in order to gain valuable natural resources from the New World. The extraction of natural resources from colonial holdings could make the European powers even stronger economically than they already were. Most colonies were developed to export products such as fish, rice, sugar, and furs. Imperialistic thoughts damaged the economies of colonized countries and treated humans as mostly so-called illiterate animals, downgrading them under French culture and language. Hello friends, I am Zar, educating common humans about our past. In this first episode of French colonization, I hope you will love to watch this series by being with me on my channel. It means a lot to me. Keep me motivated with your subscriptions, comments, likes, and shares. In this video, we shall talk about the beginning of French colonization, how French society and life in France were, the controlling methods of France over 80 colonized countries, and the mechanism of control from Paris. Actually, exploration in the 15th century was driven by a mix of economic, religious, and glory-seeking motives. Nations sought new trade routes, wealth, and religious converts, while explorers craved fame and adventure. These motivations led to technological advancements in navigation and shipbuilding. France's initial colonial presence began in the 16th and 17th centuries, with explorations and settlements in North America and the Caribbean, followed by expansion into Africa and Southeast Asia in the 19th century. Key areas of early French colonialism include Acadia, present-day Canada, the West Indies, including Haiti, Martinique, and Guadeloupe, and parts of Africa and India. Early French colonial activities were explorations by figures like Jacques Cartier and Giovanni de Verrazzano, which laid the groundwork for French claims in North America. France's early colonial presence in the 16th century was primarily focused on exploring and establishing a foothold in North America, with attempts at settlement and trade, particularly for furs. While not as extensive as later colonial efforts, these early ventures laid the groundwork for future expansion in the Americas and other regions. In 1524, Giovanni de Verrazzano, under the commission of King Francis I, explored the North American coast from Florida to Nova Scotia, claiming the territory for France. Giovanni de Verrazzano was one of the most famous Italian navigators at the time of great geographical discoveries. He was born around 1485 from the family that owned the castle in Valdegrave and died in 1528. According to the most accredited tradition, his parents were Pier Andrea di Bernardo and Fiammetta Barone. Although Verrazzano left a detailed description of his travels to North America, we don't know much about his life. Reaching the age of majority around 1506 to 1507, he chose a career as a navigator, and for this reason, he moved to Normandy. Giovanni de Verrazzano was not the first European to reach the coast of North America, as witnessed by the archaeological site Lançon Meadows, which contains the remains of a Viking village. The later Europeans to arrive on the coast of North America were several Spanish explorers who landed on the coast of Mexico. One of them, Juan Ponce de León, explored the coast of East Florida in 1513, which continues geographically to the Labrador Peninsula. Giovanni Caboto and Sebastiano Caboto also explored the northern coast of Canada. Giovanni da Verrazzano was the first European to explore the coast of the future British colonies, core of today's United States, including the Bay of New York, where he entered on April 17, 1524. Professor Stefan Massini, discoverer of the Globe da Vinci of 1504, has critically analyzed the contents of Verrazzano's travel diary. In this way, he discovered important, hitherto unknown iconographic aspects that place Verrazzano in a new light and demonstrate a link with Leonardo da Vinci. For a long time, he did not have the recognition given to other explorers. This is especially true in New York, where Henry Hudson is celebrated as the first explorer, but only in 1609. The river that flows around the island of Manhattan, which took the name Hudson from the English explorer, was also first spotted by Verrazzano, who also gave it the cartographic location. It was only with great effort that in the 50s and 60s the Tuscan explorer was recognized as the first discoverer of the area, and the Verrazzano Narrows Bridge was dedicated to him. On April 17th, Verrazzano Day is celebrated in both New York and Verrazzano Castle in Greve in Chianti. In 1534, the second explorer and historian, if you may call it that, was Jacques Cartier. On his return to France, Cartier persuaded François the first of the benefits the crown could hope to derive from colonizing these territories. Jacques Cartier's voyages led to the first French claims in Canada, specifically the Gaspé Peninsula and the St. Lawrence River area. Jacques Cartier was born in 1491 and died in 1557 in one of the three former parishes which later became communes, Saint-Malo, Saint-Servant, and Paramé. In 1789, these formed, and since the 1967 merger, make up the current commune of Saint-Malo. These three former communes compete for the honor of having seen him born without certainty. The hypothesis of an intramural birth seems the least justified. The arguments in favor of Saint-Servant and Paramé do not allow a conclusion to be drawn. It would be pointless to seek some clues about his personality and his maritime career before 1530. Several historians believe that he was able to accompany a fishing campaign to Newfoundland before 1532, as this area was frequented by Basque and Breton fishermen. Some also suggest that he was able to participate in one of the exploration trips of the Brazilian coast by Norman sailors under the Dieppe flag. Cartier makes frequent comparisons in his travel accounts between Native Americans of New France and those of Brazil, contributing through his accounts to the myth of the Good Savage. He knew Portuguese, intervening on several occasions as a Portuguese language interpreter during his retirement years after 1542. How these two navigators helped France to start creating colonies is really important to understand. Both Jacques Cartier and Giovanni da Verrazzano played key roles in laying the groundwork for French colonial expansion in North America. Verrazzano's explorations in the early 16th century, particularly his mapping of the Atlantic coast, provided France with its first glimpse of the potential for colonization. Cartier's voyages further north, especially his navigation of the St. Lawrence River, revealed a vast territory and established a claim for France, which later became known as New France. France attempted to establish a colony called France Antarctique in Brazil near present-day Rio de Janeiro, but it was ultimately unsuccessful. French traders and explorers, such as those involved in the fur trade, began to establish a presence in the St. Lawrence River, Lawrence Valley, and the Great Lakes region. The early French presence faced competition from other European powers, particularly Spain and England, who were also exploring and colonizing the Americas. The French crown initially lacked the resources and sustained commitment to fully support large-scale colonization efforts in the 16th century. France was also dealing with internal religious and political conflicts, wars of religion, during the latter half of the 16th century, which diverted attention and resources away from colonial ventures. The French colonial empire was established through the work of several key figures, with Samuel de Champlain being instrumental in establishing the first permanent French settlement in North America, Quebec, in 1608. While other individuals like Pierre de Guaudemont and Jean-François de la Roque de Roberval were involved in earlier colonial ventures, Champlain's efforts in Canada, particularly the founding of Quebec, are considered foundational to French colonization. Before Champlain, Pierre de Guaudemont and Samuel de Champlain established a short-lived colony on St. Croix Island in 1604, which was later moved to Port Royal, present-day Nova Scotia. Samuel de Champlain is often referred to as the father of New France. He played a crucial role in exploring and mapping the Sun, Lawrence region, establishing trading posts and forging alliances with indigenous peoples. His most significant contribution was the founding of Quebec in 1608, which became a key center for French colonization. Other notable figures were Jean-François de la Roque de Roberval, who was commissioned to establish a colony on the St. Lawrence River, but his efforts were less successful than Champlain's. Louis XIV also played a role in integrating New France into the royal domain and establishing the French West India Company. Despite the challenges, these early expeditions laid the groundwork for future French colonial endeavors in North America, particularly in the 17th century with the establishment of Quebec and other settlements. The fur trade became a key driver for French exploration and settlement in North America, shaping early relationships with indigenous populations. The early explorations and claims established French territorial ambitions in North America, which would later be expanded upon in the 17th and 18th centuries. The French left their mark on the North American territory in a variety of ways, through their manner of clearing and dividing the land, establishing villages and cities, building a network of roads and trails, and developing the territory with varied types of construction. They transformed and adapted environments according to their needs, pushing ever further west and south to find a constant supply of fur. The French deployed a whole network of alliances with the most influential Aboriginal tribes, economic and military alliances that enabled them not only to contain the English on the Atlantic seaboard for over 150 years, but also to ensure the survival of an underpopulated New France, whose borders would have been difficult to defend otherwise. The first wave of European colonization in New France, now Canada, resulted in significant casualties, primarily due to disease, warfare with indigenous populations, and harsh living conditions. While precise numbers are difficult to determine, historical records and analysis suggest substantial losses, especially among the initial settlers. Settlers faced diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza, to which they had no immunity, causing widespread illness and death. The French colonists engaged in conflicts with various indigenous nations, leading to casualties on both sides. The Lachine Massacre, for example, resulted in the deaths of an estimated 200 to 250 settlers and soldiers, while 70 were taken prisoner. The challenging climate, limited resources, and difficult terrain led to starvation, exposure, and accidents, contributing to mortality rates. During the colonization of New France, the French primarily used firearms like muskets and pistols, as well as edged weapons such as swords and bayonets. Artillery like cannons and mortars were also employed, particularly in sieges and fortifications. But indigenous peoples employed a variety of weapons, including traditional tools and weapons like bows and arrows, spears and hatchets, as well as European-introduced firearms such as muskets and pistols, which they often obtained through trade. As they were not trained soldiers, the French always had an edge over them through tactical warfare and weapons like heavy cannons. During the period of New France colonization, France primarily used the livre, sol also known as sou, and denier as its currency. These were the same units of account used in France itself. The system was similar to the English system of pounds, shillings, and pence, with 20 sols equaling 1 livre and 12 deniers equaling 1 sol. While the theoretical value of transactions was expressed in livres, sols, and deniers, the actual coins in circulation were diverse and included French coins like the ACU, worth 3 livres, Louis, 60 sous, and franc, 1 livre, as well as foreign coins like Spanish pesos. A significant challenge in New France was the chronic shortage of coins, which led to the use of paper money in the form of playing cards, monnaie de carte. The first permanent French settlement, Quebec, experienced high mortality rates in its early years. This attack by the Iroquois resulted in significant casualties among the French colonists. The conflict between Britain and France for control of North America led to further loss of life for the French colonists. Many colonists, disillusioned with the hardships, chose to return to France, further impacting the colony's population. New France, like other colonial ventures, was marked by instances of violence, including murder and rape, which were often intertwined with power dynamics and attempts to control populations. The violence experienced by women during this period highlights the gendered nature of colonial conflict, where women were often targeted and subjected to sexual violence as a means of subjugation. Historians are still actively researching these events, and while specific numbers may be scarce, the overall picture points to a prevalence of violence against women in the context of New France. Legal records indicate that prosecuting these crimes in colonial settings was challenging due to limited legal frameworks and cultural norms. Historical analyses highlight that indigenous women were particularly vulnerable to sexual violence from French soldiers and colonists. Practically limited rights for indigenous people, despite their slogans of liberty, equality, and humanity, colonists were treated and regarded as high-profile people, having all the rights to impose their culture, religion, language, and to loot local resources, etc. Religion, specifically Catholicism, was interwoven with the colonial project and functioned as both a tool and a source of punishment. While Catholicism was the official religion, with the state actively promoting its spread and suppressing dissent, it also became a source of conflict between the colonists, the clergy, and the indigenous populations. Religion in New France was a double-edged sword. It was used to solidify French power, promote conformity, and control the population, but it also led to conflict and punishment, especially for those who did not conform to the dominant religious and social order. Missionaries, with the support of the colonial administration, sought to convert indigenous populations, often clashing with their traditional beliefs and practices. 3 groups of Roman Catholic missionaries came to New France determined to convert First Nations peoples: the Recollets, the Jesuits, and the Ursuline nuns. Economically, the church was also a formidable presence. It owned a quarter of the land in New France and was landlord to about a third of the colonists. Priests, nuns, and other clerics constituted about 2% of the colony's population. In Massachusetts, clergymen were less than 0.2% of the population. Religious dissent, particularly Protestantism, was punished through legal restrictions and social pressure. The church played a significant role in education, healthcare, and social welfare, often acting as an arm of the state in promoting conformity. Huguenots, French Protestants, were forbidden from settling in New France, and those who did were often pressured to convert or conceal their faith. Religious conformity was seen as a sign of loyalty to the French crown and the colonial project. In summary, the colonization of New France was a costly endeavor, with disease, conflict, and difficult conditions contributing to high casualty rates among the French settlers during the early period. As well, guerrilla warfare by local militants or groups made security always a hot issue for settlers. When we think about France and its colonization, and life in France before it started colonization, we might better understand the reasons behind it. Was it hunger, a desperate nation wanting dominance? Or was it creating and securing jobs at home? Was it trade? We'll explore many reasons and the role of churches, as well as the construction of French society shortly before it started colonization. And that concludes our first episode on the ambitions of France to colonize the world. We've seen how explorers, trade, religion, and politics all pushed France across the seas, but the story is far from complete. In the next episode, we'll turn our focus inward to France itself. What kind of society gave rise to these ambitions? How did ordinary people live? And what role did the monarchy and the church play in shaping their future empire? I am Zar. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay with me as we uncover more of our shared history.